Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thanks so much for joining me here. We're going to take a quick look at Wax, and just before we do, peek over at Bitcoin, see what's going on with that. It's been obviously a little fussy recently, as we can see here on the 4 hour. We've got this, nice little increase, decrease, and then ramp right back up. So it keeps kind of, sharp increases, sharp decreases. So it just tells us that there's definitely a lot of, I wouldn't say manipulation, but there's a lot of volume that isn't us, if that makes any sense, right? So it's kind of hard to predict at this point in time specifically where Bitcoin's going to go, but we can kind of see that there's an average amount of volume right around 49,300, kind of right there in the middle. And then of course the price didn't come down any lower than 49,000 recently. In fact, there was a big buy obviously that shot the price back up at 49. So perhaps 49,000 is a tentative bottom at this point. That's kind of what it's telling us, but there's not much else to really note. For the moment, I know yesterday I was referring to the potential for a dead cat. That is still a potential, right? We can't rule that out just based on the fact that Bitcoin has a tendency of kind of faking us out recently. It's doing the same thing right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some further action down. In fact, as a trading community, we are waiting to take entry right now on most things, just based on the simple fact that it's that calm before the storm right now, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We need it to establish itself at a good support, and it hasn't done that yet. And until it breaks about 52,300, the previous resistance is the Fibonacci retracement level, we need to make sure that we are careful and cautious, right? So don't go all in, just dollar cost average. If you are on certain coins, just be careful, of course. But Bitcoin still hasn't officially made up its mind yet, and it might stay sideways for a little while, and that's okay if it does. The longer it goes sideways, the better, so we can get some kind of, I guess some kind of direction. We need Bitcoin to stabilize before anything else happens. We can't experience another dead cat down to 42. That would be very difficult. At least a lot of altcoins would suffer because of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here and see what's going on. So obviously it's done some things here. I can see why I got a lot of requests for this recently. A pretty significant increase in just 24-hour trading period. That candlestick hasn't closed yet, and we're looking at about 62% from bottom to top. So ultimately, a lot of movement in a short amount of time. We've got RSI under 50, so still considered bearish, but you can see it's trying to make a recovery here where the bulls are essentially taking control. Next couple days, we probably should see the RSI back up over 50. If we can get that to close a little bit higher, there might be a resistance level right here we're going to need to look at and kind of see what's going on. But with the recent high, that could essentially be causing something, because I can kind of see a consistent line here with the one-day candlestick close, as well as the all-time highs, a few candle wicks. They're all kind of averaging out right around 60 cents. So I'd speculate at this point, just loosely, that 60 cents is probably a pretty consistent resistance level that happened 4 times previously and again possibly today. We'll see what happens obviously in time, but that's kind of what we're looking at there. So looking at the 4-hour chart, let's go ahead and see what's going on here. We are below the 200, but above the 50 tentatively. So if we can close above the 50-day simple moving average, that'll be a really good sign. Keep the price kind of trending upwards, for lack of better terms here, but generally speaking, we're kind of between both. And then we have the RSI under 70, which is great. We like to see an RSI under 70 because it really does help us understand that there's still more room for growth. And obviously with Wax's history, you can tell it has a history of doing this. It ramps straight up and has come back down, but then continues to progress upwards. Ramps up, comes down, progresses upwards. Did the exact same thing here. So, I mean, for the most part, it has these really strong 4-hour candlesticks. I'm willing to guess there's obviously a lot of volume. As you can see here today, there definitely is. In fact, that's probably the most amount of volume we've seen since the previous increase back in October on the 30th. And just note that, history has a tendency of repeating itself, right? So the likelihood of this going up immediately today is pretty low. What could and should happen, if you look at its history, is a mirror image of this, where it comes up, comes right back down, and then it progresses upwards. So we could see it come up, come down, and then progress upwards to eventually break that, resistance at about 60 cents. Okay. Because you just got to know that, again, history doesn't necessarily always repeat itself, but it oftentimes does. I know it sounds like a paradox, right? But for the most part, I've noticed that it's more consistent, more likely than not, you're going to see a pattern continue. And a lot of it has to do with, again, things are out of our control. This pattern here is obviously not a bunch of us, dumping our money on all at the exact same time. It's somebody else that has a tremendous amount of money that is driving the price up, and then they'll sell it as soon as it gets to the top, based on the simple fact that a lot of us are FOMOing in, and then we get stuck in our positions, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. That happens so often. So that's why it's important not to FOMO into a lot of things. Obviously, you catch the initial burst, maybe, but when it's a 4-hour candlestick this size, I would steer clear of it in most cases. Again, unless this is a coin that you know that you want to invest in long term, that's all well and good. But I just kind of steer clear of stuff like that personally. It's served me very well over the years. So take a look here at Ichimoku Cloud. It's probably going to be kind of funky because when you have a massive spike like this, you can kind of just there's not much to disseminate based on the fact that everything is based on this most recent 1 hour. I mean, 1 hour candlestick increasing 60%. Come on, right? That should never happen. So ultimately, that metric doesn't really work. TD sequential is going to be pretty much null and void. In other words, we really have not much to extract here as well because it's going to shoot up. And should we have 4 more hours of bullish continuation? Hypothetically, we should if it was a healthy continuation, right? This is very unhealthy in my personal opinion. I think we're going to see the price come back down. Maybe not tremendously, right? It might even stabilize right there at the resistance of 60 cents. But the likelihood of it coming down, I would say another 10, 20% is pretty likely, just based on the way in which, in cryptocurrency, I've noticed that anything that goes up has to come down when it goes up that fast, right? And when it comes down, it usually comes down 50 to 60% of its original starting point. So, hypothetically, if you were to kind of just estimate this being, 100% up top, 0% up bottom, it'll probably come down to this line or this line, which is like the, 40 to 50% range, the lower half. It almost always averages out at 0.5, if not lower. And why don't we take a look at that here as well, so you see what I'm referring to for Fibonacci. And we'll go ahead and go with a really small time frame here. This is like a 5-hour Fibonacci, but just if you kind of see that, look at that. No coincidence. We have the previous resistance at 0.6, or sorry, 60 cents, and then what that is. That's 0.5 on Fibonacci, the halfway point, right? Because 1 is up top, 0.5 is right halfway, and that's where the resistance is currently. But as you can see, the price will probably start kind of consolidating right in this range here, probably lose there, and usually resides right in the 0.236 range, which is again the lower, I guess you could say lower half or lower quarter. So generally speaking, the price should average out in this here. Not to say it won't ramp back up and continue to start making its way up, because previously it definitely did that. But for right now, this is such a large increase, the likelihood of it just shooting up continuously from here is fairly low. A, based on its history, but B, too much volume in such a short amount of time. You can tell there was kind of a pump and dump in this example here because, again, 1 hour, 60%, that is just unrealistic. There's no way that people like you and I drove that price action up. Somebody took their profits already, and they're slowly draining, they're slowly selling their positions, lowering the price so they can buy in at a better average. You see it happen all the time, unfortunately, in crypto, so that it's best to identify when it happens and to avoid it altogether, and maybe consider buying the next dip when that were to happen. And regarding the next dip, what should likely occur, as I mentioned, I would say 52 to 56 cents is a likely price range for this once it stabilizes. It could possibly stay between 56 and 60 cents, but I think you're better off waiting a little bit because this should perpetually decrease as time goes on and average itself out. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm speculating here. That's pretty much where we're at. One other Fibonacci we could draw is the most recent high with the most recent low, and kind of get an estimate too. That pretty much reaffirms the fact that 52 cents is a strong likelihood of the next available support. And the reason why I say that too is because obviously you can see right here there's a decent amount of resistance at this point. And that's kind of reaffirming that as a stronger support. So I would say worst case is 52 cents. Best case is somewhere in the range of 56 to 60 over the next 24 hours. Wait for it to level out. The likelihood of it shooting straight up again is very, very low. Okay, just know that. I don't think that's going to happen. In the long term, could this increase up to 95 cents or $1? Yeah, that's very much likely, of course, because it's been there before and it could be there again. But based on what I see here so far, this just seems like a little bit of manipulation and not really all that worthwhile. So I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks again for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much.